The initial idea behind backlinks was Google's a popularity contest.
Diane Moura, founder and CEO at ZenChange Marketing, didn't just survive corporate. She brought the best of it to small businesses. From building websites herself to scaling a team that now runs the show, her story is full of lessons for anyone trying to grow smarter. Let's jump in.
You can't just put all your eggs in that basket because depending on what your generation, but the Gen Zs of the world, they're searching on social. I think the whole micro influencer strategy has really evolved into podcasting as well. And that can be a very effective form of digital PR, if you will.
E-Coffee with Experts.
Welcome to E-Coffee with Experts. My name is Austin Willman. I'm here with my friend Diane Moura. She is a fractional CMO and has been for almost 3 decades. She's an agency owner of ZenChange Marketing Agency. And we go way back to being members of a community run by some of the top marketers in the world. And now she's here on E-Coffee with Experts. Diane, I'm so happy to see you. Welcome to the show.
Great to see you, Austin.
Well, I know after a couple weeks, you and I haven't talked for a while, and you were away from your business, which is kind of like the dream for every entrepreneur. They want to build a business that can run without them. And you actually experienced that over the last month or so. Can you tell us what you did to prepare for your leave of absence and give us a little bit of context, like how you prepared your team, what that looked like, and let's start there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had spine surgery. I think it's like where I'm in week 8 now, post-surgery. And so my surgeon was very, very specific with me when I had the pre-op consult with him that I was not to even think about working for 4 weeks after surgery because you're pretty heavily medicated after something like that. So it probably wouldn't have been the best thing for my business.
Yeah.
In it and doing things and trying to consult and all of that, because who knows what would have come out of my mouth. But so knowing that was coming, I mean, fortunately, we had I think about 4 months to plan. And so, I worked with my leadership team. I worked with my entire team to, let them know what was happening and, try to assure them that, it's a little bit different when, thankfully this was something that was an elective surgery, right? So it's not like I suddenly had to be out, which would have been a different situation. But, our agency already runs on EOS, which is Entrepreneurial Operating System. So we have tons of SOPs. We have everything documented. We have a structure of account managers who oversee each brand and then project managers who work for them and, make sure that all the blocking and tackling of things gets done. And then we have all of our delivery team. So, we at least had a structure to start with, which was super helpful. But we had some meetings in advance to talk about what are the things that would need to be offloaded from me while I was out, and in particular to make sure that all of our clients were cared for. And then we did a trial run. So for the month before I went out, I said, I'm not responding to client emails. So I had like all automatic forwarding of my emails to the appropriate team member. And initially when I started that, because I did that for, I think, several weeks before. So I would check in with them every time there was, somebody would send an email. I'd check in with the person that was supposed to get the auto forward, make sure that they got it. So the system was working. And then for 4 weeks before, I backed off of Slack, other than I think I was just on a couple of channels where somebody could reach out, but I backed out of all the delivery channels, backed out of email, because a lot of the things, there were still, and I'm sure other owners can relate to this, you end up, for whatever reason, still being the 2-factor for some accounts.
Oh, yeah.
Into. So we had to make sure that, everything, even though we use LastPass, so I mean, everything is all, we have it all encrypted and that. So access itself wasn't an issue, but we had to make sure that all the 2 factors were appropriately transitioned and all that. But I think the trial run really helped a lot. And then after, it's not the first time that I've been out completely, but usually it would be for a week of vacation. So this was an extended period of time. And then when we got back, we did a bit of a reliving what went well, what could have gone better, so that we could continue to refine the processes for next time. And honestly, I think, my team did so well, running things, that I've found that coming back, I'm able to focus on different areas as a leader. And it's funny because all the leadership books will tell you, the best thing in the world that you can do for your business is just, leave it alone for a few weeks, which is scary for a lot of founders. But when you have to do it and you actually do it, I think I think your company's stronger at the end. So it was actually a really good experience.
That's what I wanted to ask too, is how did that leave shape the way you think about your involvement in the business? You mentioned a little bit more about how you're thinking about leadership differently. I'm wondering how that had an effect on you.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, so there's a certain, even though you tell people that they're empowered, if you're there, some people pick it up and some people don't pick it up. And I think when you're empowered, but you really have to do things on your own, you just kind of get into the mode of doing things on your own a little bit more. So I have actually remained backed out of all the delivery channels. My team now just they pull, I still oversee, any of our larger clients, the strategy, but I'm working with my leadership team to help them with that. So I've become more of their, I think, coach and guide on strategy, and, really have allowed them to step up a lot more, which is what we all wanted in the first place. It's, I think, better for everyone.
And that's what you're good at, and that's what you like to do. You're a fractional CMO for many different companies at the same time, and you've been doing that for a long time. So it almost seems like strategy and like the coaching of these other CEOs in different companies, like that's kind of your sweet spot,
That's
right?
yeah, it's what I love doing more than anything. I mean, I had the good fortune of working in corporate America for a number of years. I've consulted with 30 of the Fortune 500. I've had a chance to, be in a couple of boardrooms, not on the board, presenting to the boards and sort of understanding that, at scale executive thinking, and then, sort of migrating from that to, helping clients directly. I feel like that's where I excel. It's my passion. I could do it until I'm 90. I'm just in my happy place doing that. I love seeing, when I talk to clients and they're either struggling with something or they're trying to figure it out, and then just working through that process with them is really, really rewarding.
Yeah, it's kind of like a been there, done that, but not in a, not in a depreciative way.
Yeah, but like, I think one of the benefits of seeing things with scale is that, obviously companies that have grown to the point where, they're Fortune 500 companies, they've obviously been really successful. They've put the processes and the systems and the structure in place, and they've tried a number of things. And so it tends to be more proven. Whereas a lot of times as an entrepreneur, you're like, I'm going to try this. Nope, that didn't work. I'm going to try this. Nope, that didn't work either. You feel like a little bit of like the ball in the pinball machine sometimes, I think. So that's where I think having executives working with you, even on a fractional basis, or having a coach, like I think those types of sounding boards can be super valuable.
You started ZenChange in 2012, is that right?
Mhm.
Ish. Okay. And before that, you were working, like you said, with Fortune 500 companies, and you were picking up these processes, these SOPs. What did ZenChange look like at the very beginning? Like, do you feel like you practiced what they were preaching, or was it still kind of the entrepreneurial journey where you had to kind of figure everything out and start from scratch, even though you've seen it all?
Well, I mean, I think that's a good question. Like a lot of companies, it started out with me as the solo, and then, as I grew, I was able to bring in specialists in SEO and design and paid ads, et cetera, et cetera. I was definitely the chief cook and bottle washer, as they say, for quite a while. But I think that, one of the, there's definitely a lot of lessons seeing things at scale. But when you're working with SMBs, they don't necessarily have the same resources. So, and even you as a founder, I was used to being able to, I have a legal question. I'm going to just go to our in-house counsel and ask them questions, and, like whatever you need, there's, I have this like really deep technical question. Well, there's a whole bunch of people I can go and ask. And I think as a founder, the difference is that you don't have all those resources in the company. So I had to learn to build my network of resources that I could lean on for different things. So you're almost kind of replicating the structure of corporate, but it's just not necessarily all within one company.
It's not in-house, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it takes a while to build that network, and it almost seems like you were very fortunate to have those connections through these bigger companies to help you as almost like outside counsel instead of inside counsel as you're building that brand. What What was the service that you started ZenChange with, or was it always full service?
It wasn't full service. We actually started with websites.
Okay.
That was the first thing that we built.
Mm.
And I can tell you back in the day, I was building websites because,
Yeah.
you do what you can. And then I hired people on to do that. And just to clarify, I wasn't leaning on my corporate network because they're obviously focused on their corporate world, but I had learned from the structure of all of the resources you have in corporate, the other small business resources that I need to pull into my network in order to basically replicate that structure, but in more of a kind of a semi insourced / outsourced environment.
So you were building the websites yourself, and that's kind of like where everything started. Looking at how ZenChange has changed now, what is your core business now?
So what we've done is rather than focusing on a specific marketing service, we focus on verticals. So we'll be a one-stop shop for, in particular, regulated industries. So think, healthcare and legal. We do a lot of work with trades. And for them, where it's really strategy to execution, because especially in today's environment, I'm sure you've heard me say this quote a bunch of times, the old expression, if you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So if you have an agency and you're focused on one thing, then, you're going to think that it's that one thing that is going to help the client to grow their business. I prefer to have a broader toolkit. And then depending on the situation, we'll bring in the right tools for the job. And those tools might change over time. I mean, we don't lock clients into a particular scope. We're going to continue to look at their results and things. For everyone who's paying attention, things in marketing are being disrupted rather radically. And so what worked 6 months ago might not be working now for that client. So you have to be able to adjust. So I would rather be the marketing partner for a niche that we really understand than to try to be, a service provider in a particular service, like let's say it's websites or SEO, and do that broadly across many, many verticals.
It almost seems like taking that approach, you do have to have strong connections in the industry, partnerships that you can lean on. Is there, and if we're looking at the company comes in, like in a regulated industry, cannabis, wine, and they say, hey, we really want to get on top of our marketing. We have a budget. We've grown enough. We don't quite have the internal resources to do it. So we need an agency and someone with expertise. And it almost seems like you're the filter that they go through, and then you can kind of direct, which direction is going to get the most bang for their buck. Everybody's looking for an ROI. I guess what I'm asking is, do you have other partners that you rely on or work with regularly to pull into those businesses? Or is there maybe let me ask this question more clearly. Is there a trend that you see in regulated industries of a direction to go down first?
So it's going to depend on which industry, for example, but let's say if we're talking about attorneys, we'll just take legal as an example. So a lot of times and the firms that we usually work with are going to be, somewhere in the neighborhood of 1 to 10 partners. So they're not massive corporate law firms.
Mm-hmm.
So the common denominator there tends to be that attorneys are usually really busy. They're running around like crazy. They're either in court half the time or, even if they focus on transactional work, they're really busy seeing clients. I'm not going to say they don't care about marketing. They know they have to have it. They don't really know how to tackle it. And they're not really, again, I'm generalizing, but I will say a lot of them don't necessarily care to learn. Mm-hmm. They just want it done. They just want it done right. They want somebody who can come in and guide them and say, mm-hmm. this is what we need to do. And a lot of what's working with law firms these days is really going all in on the personal brand of the partners, because especially I think with, with AI, which I know we're going to talk about, I'm sure at some point, but
oh yeah, warming up.
There's a proliferation of content. It is so easy to create content, but it doesn't mean it's good. And I think that your potential clients also know that it's so easy to create content. So there's less of a, I think that you used to be able to just create a ton of content on your website, it would rank, you'd get traffic, people would call you. Like that was just sort of your typical funnel. But I think that finding a way to cut through the noise is so much more important now. So, getting, and they don't all like it, but getting these attorneys on video, finding a really good way to kind of portray them as humans, as approachable. You're not only, it's kind of a combination of, yes, you're answering those frequently asked questions, you're doing all of that, but you're also, you're kind of building the personality of the individual as a leader. Like, so it goes a lot deeper, because if you're, and you'll see a lot, and I know that you've seen this as well, probably on LinkedIn, that there's a lot of the content that people are resonating with is not necessarily that corporate sounding professional content. Resonating with the, here's a life lesson, here's a leadership lesson, here's something I screwed up and I learned from it. Now, obviously you got to be careful. You're not going to say I screwed up something and it was, directly related to it, something with a client.
Yeah.
You have to balance that, right? But just the, the idea that, you're human, but yet you're also an expert in this particular area. And then by building that audience, that approachability, then you're the person who's going to tend to be top of mind when they have a matter that needs your attention. And if that's not enough, obviously the, even like the LLMs are, not all of them, but you think about that. There's over 50% of searches on Google end in 0-click now. So where are people going? Well, they're looking at the AI snippet, right, which is Gemini. And you think about, so what's the logic of the platform? If you're at Google and you're building an algorithm that's going to prioritize certain things, what are you going to prioritize? Well, you want to try to keep things within your ecosystem if you can. So Google owns YouTube. So hello. YouTube has always, for a long time has been showing up high in search results, but guess what? Gemini loves YouTube too, because it's all part of the family. So you're going to see when it's referencing a video, it's going to like pull up a YouTube video. Reddit also tends to be performing really well in search. So some of these other avenues, you have to work that into your strategy. So I think, when we're approaching, whether it's a private practice physician, whether it's an attorney, we're always starting with strategy, and we're starting with kind of, where are you now? Where are your competitors? Where do you realistically want to be? What's it going to take to get there? Here's the roadmap. And then, like, it all needs to be done yes or yes, but is there anything that your team can do to lighten the load of the budget versus the things where, our team is going to step in and help? Because it's all, with marketing, it's all time versus money, right? If you have a lot of time, you don't need to spend a ton of money. If you don't have a lot of time, you're going to have to spend more money.
That's right.
Be done because your competitors are doing it. So.
Yeah. And it seems like that's kind of a place where a lot of agencies that I've seen start with their strategy is say, hey, look, this is where you're at and this is where your competitors are at. The first step is like, let's see if we can get you up to par with where your competitors are, at least in this realm. I mean, specifically if we're talking about link placement and rankings, of course. And that's what everybody's after. But really, the only reason that rankings matter are because they have to turn into a sale, right? It has to turn into revenue for the client. You just said something about producing content and more personal content, specifically on LinkedIn. And it just reminded me of things that I've been seeing over the last week. It's like 3 business lessons that I learned from being caught with my head of HR at a Coldplay concert.
Yeah. Okay. So, did you really want to be a meme? I mean, yeah.
Right. Come on, man.
Yeah, I know. Well, look, I mean, that's like a little bit of, in the world of PR, they call that newsjacking, right? And it's sort of like, it could be news or it could be like that kind of news, but.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about that. Offline, we were having a conversation about links and SEO strategy and digital PR. And you had mentioned that obviously things are changing with SEO and, considering getting more into the digital PR side. What are your thoughts behind that? Why did that come up?
Well, I think, so SEO obviously it's shifting a lot right now, and it's it's still there. I'm not going to say it's not going away. I mean, you're going to see all sorts of crazy stuff online about, the website as we know it is going away and SEO is dead, and et cetera, et cetera. So I think the challenge is there's just more avenues by which people are searching. So you used to be able to kind of rely on, hey, if I'm ranking on Google and I'm in the top 3, I'm golden. That's it. I don't need to do anything else. That's not the case anymore. So do you want to still rank on Google? Yeah, you do, but you can't just put all your eggs in that basket. So, you're also going to be have to show up on social, because depending on what your generation, but the Gen Zs of the world, they're searching on social. If they want to look, they're using social as their search engine. And part of the challenge is a lot of people will say, oh, I'm doing this stuff on social and it never brought me any leads. Okay, but think about how a human searches. They're gathering information before they want to reach out. So when they're gathering information, they might be gathering it on social. They might be gathering it on, or Substack or YouTube, or, wherever they're looking, or on LinkedIn. You want to be there especially for your referral partners, or if you target professionals. But, they might not DM you. Maybe when they get to the point they've done their research and they're like, I want to work with Austin, they might Google Austin and find the phone number, and then they call you from there. So there's this term that has been coined now. I think Neil Patel actually coined it. I'm going to give him credit for it. It's about search everywhere optimization. So it's this idea that you can't just be on Google. You really have to be on all the different platforms, because of what's happening with zero clicks and you have to be authentic. So it's not enough to just crank out. There used to be all these, there probably still are, but agencies who would just have a bunch of offshore writers and they'd be just cranking out blogs and we'll put 10 blogs on your website and we're going to have the right meta and keywords and boom, you're up there. Well, that's not good enough anymore, because Google's now rewarding value. So it's rewarding engagement a lot more. Like, is your traffic still important? I mean, kind of, but it's basically, I think what's happening with SEO is what's already happened with social. We used to have the vanity metrics of, well, I have like a bazillion followers. Okay, that's great. And you have 3 people engaging with your post. Something's up with that, right?
Right.
We've all learned, even as humans on social, that like before I think somebody is absolutely amazing, I'm looking at their engagement. I'm looking, because otherwise I feel like their followers are kind of fake. So it's similar on your website. Like you could have a ton of traffic, but are people engaging with the content on your traffic, or on your website rather? Are they visiting multiple pages when they get there? Are they spending enough time on the page that it looks like they actually read it? Because Google knows if they jump on and jump off again, that's a human way of saying, didn't find value here, I'm moving on. So then Google's going to say, oh, no value here, let's maybe not rank this quite as high. So I think, being as human as possible, like writing, you definitely have to write for the LLMs. You have to make sure that you're kind of synthesizing things for them and making it easy and answering a question and, giving them everything, as high up to the top of your, whatever your content is, as you can. Do backlinks matter? Yes, but those backlinks still need to drive actual engagement, drive, traffic from that perspective to your website as well. So, I think the algorithms are just getting a lot smarter at evaluating what we as humans know is valuable content anyway, and rewarding that.
You see a lot of people who are just freelancers or contractors that are selling links, and they say, look, we have high DR, high DA websites, like we can place you here and we'll give you really cheap backlinks. But what you're saying is those metrics they're not the only important metric, right? Those are like sometimes vanity metrics. There's a lot more to look into. And kind of along with this, but also a little bit off topic, I saw a guy on LinkedIn yesterday who was a semantic specialist. He said, I can help you or your team write semantically for LLMs to pick up. And I was like, oh, that's a unique, specialty. I haven't heard of that. But it's almost like the LLMs know what they know their own kind, right? They know what's written by a human, they know what's written by an LLM, and that doesn't necessarily matter, but what matters is, can they pick it up and can they find relevance based on what people are searching for? So, you have these providers who can provide links for high metrics in one category, but it almost seems like you're alluding to, the human connection is what really matters, right? The human as the end user is what really matters. And so with digital PR, like you're pitching to journalists, like you're still pitching to humans. You still have to understand who's writing the article or who's going to be in association with that publication. So I mean, do you, or like, does your team have those sort of relationships with publications or journalists, or like, how are you getting content out there in a reliable way that actually makes a difference to the client?
So there's a lot to unpack in what you just said there. So on the LLM specifically, and writing semantically for the LLMs, I think, and then backlinks. So the initial idea behind backlinks was Google's a popularity contest. So kind of like if you think about when you're writing a paper for college and you have to cite your sources. So if a more popular website than you, a higher ranked website, writes an article and cites you as a source, then that would be a trigger to Google to say that, oh, you must be more important too. So does that still help? Yeah, sure, that still helps. But what the SEOs are telling us that Google is favoring even more than just the link and somebody referencing you is, did anyone from that website ever click on that link and go visit your website? Because now you're a real, you're a real resource, so it's more legitimate. So did a human take action on that thing that you did? So, if somebody is in some, offshore location and they have this, like DA80 site in an offshore location that is specifically targeting their offshore audience and you're cited as a reference, does that bring you valuable traffic? That's questionable, right? Where I think where PR in general, I think comes in, and full disclosure, we are not a PR company. That would be an area where we typically would partner with a PR firm. But for clients where we have partnered, the benefit that you do get is some of the, some of the links, some of the resources that they can provide from being able to publish content that people are actually seeing and clicking on and doing something with can drive more attention to the brand. And then you're also typically going to then get content that can be repurposed on social and, repurposed on your website, and value in that. So then there's that whole brand credibility, depending on where you publish. Now we can put some swanky logos on the website that say, as seen on MSNBC and CNN and da da da. And so then the actual human coming to your site sees that as a signal. And then, we can't forget what Google does love, being, EAT, which is expertise, experience, authority, and trust. So part of that authority can be, maybe you can flex that in an article that you write, and now that's a reference. And so I think they work hand in hand. I don't think, any of these strategies, there's no silver bullet. There's nothing that you can do exclusively and say, if I show up on CNN once, that suddenly my business blows up. I mean, that can happen, right? And it's happened to a lot of businesses, but I don't think you can just rely on that necessarily being the case.
Yeah, it's like basing your growth strategy of your business on a post going viral. Like, we have this expectation of this one post hitting over 1 million views, and that's what's going to make us blow up. Like, it's almost Q4. Let's go. We got to get this post viral. Yeah, it doesn't work like that. I guess what I was going to is, the human relationships when you're talking with journalists, and, this is not my expertise. We have a whole team that does this, but I would imagine that if you're pitching a journalist a story, there's a difference between the publication saying, like, there are agencies out there that are competing like ZenChange and Single Grain or whatever. Like, in that context, it's one thing, and a human reading that might be like, okay, I get it. These are marketing agencies. Or they could say, the article could be about agencies in regulated industries who are doing things really well, like ZenChange. And that might be a different context.
And then in regulated industry, you're going to be like, oh, like who? I'm going to go check them out. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that definitely has more value. And even, I don't know if you want to call it PR, but it's a form of PR, but podcasts. I mean, you and I are having this conversation today. I also have a podcast. I will shamelessly plug Entrepreneur with Diane Moura.
Nice.
Available wherever you listen to your podcast.
Right.
But I mean, a podcast can be, so I'll take it from both angles. So if you are the host of a podcast, then that can be a really low friction way to expand your network. If you have an opportunity to reach out to people who could become referral partners and also are going to, you don't want to do it blatantly. I literally turned down a podcast invitation yesterday because, somebody invited me. In theory, it sounded great. And they sent me over the questions, and it literally sounded like a due diligence interview on my business to see how they would pitch me. And I'm like, not feeling that. So you can't really be super blatant about it. You have to go in with the idea of, I really just want to develop this relationship. I want to explore if there's, ways that we have synergies and we can help one another to grow. There has to be that feeling of reciprocity there as well. But you do have the opportunity to have a prep call before. You've got, a few minutes after you finish recording with somebody who could become a referral partner. So that can be great. And all the while you're delivering value to an audience. You're creating content that can, your social media team can then break up and use it in different ways. You can post it. We talked about YouTube. So you can take the podcast, you can put it on YouTube, you can optimize it there, have a really good thumbnail, have, good description, use the keywords, embed that into your website on your press page. You can kind of spin it off into articles, et cetera, et cetera. So that just from a content generation perspective is great. And then there's a lot of, PR firms who will like pitch people to be guests on podcasts, and they'll put together, we've done a little bit of that with our clients, but, we'll like kind of put together a speaker profile for them and, reach out to various podcasts where the host's audience would be a good fit for the business. So then that's the opportunity where you're speaking to that audience. So it's very, I think the whole micro influencer strategy has really evolved into podcasting as well. And you'll see a lot more people starting podcasts, being hosts and, guests on podcasts, and that is we're doing today. So that can be a very effective form of digital PR, if you will.
Love that. Yeah, that's exactly our intention here at Digital Web Solutions and eCoffee with Experts, is to really just build relationships. And we also understand exactly what you just said. Like, our audience is over 10,000 people. We distribute it across all platforms, as well as send it out in a newsletter. And our podcasts, if they're open to it, obviously we'll backlink to them. So there's more than one benefit to doing just a conversation like this and building a relationship. The best relationships are built in person. So I was wondering, I wanted to ask you, I was going to ask you after the call, but are you going to any conferences the rest of the year?
Yes, so I do some local networking as well, which I continue to do. And I actually, quite ironically, I was in a group that was probably 90% online and then the occasional in person. And I have now migrated to a group that is 100% in person because, is one of the things that I notice, as much as I think a lot of us got excited when we went through COVID and it's like, oh, thank God, I don't have to get in the drive anywhere and
Right.
I can work in my pajamas and, all of that. Yeah, we're seeing a shift, right? I think we're seeing a backlash. You're definitely seeing a backlash in corporate where, the whole RTO direction is really uprooting a lot of people who got really comfy in COVID. But it's also, I think the human to human connection is still really, really important. And I think from if you are out there trying to make connections, like ideally make the connection online, try to, like I like to say, like, let's say you're engaging on LinkedIn. So, engage, have those DMs, take it to a Zoom. If they're local, see if maybe you can actually go have coffee with them. You'll just have, we're humans. We like being with other humans, most of us. And you'll just have a much stronger relationship. So, and, conference wise, a lot of them are still online. One that I attended, the last one was it in January of this year, was the social media marketing world from Social Media and Get Mike Stelzner's conference. That was really super valuable. The only thing with that one is I just felt like there was so much knowledge that they were sharing that even though it was myself and somebody from my leadership team who attended, we couldn't be in all of the places at once. And we unfortunately didn't get the pass that would give you all the digital content afterwards. So now I have the digital version of it, and we're definitely going to get all the content, but need to decide if we're going to actually go there in person again as well. But I think there'll be a mix, and I'm looking at, especially, some of the conferences that focus more on marketing AI are really on my radar to potentially attend one way or the other.
Yeah, there's some conferences that we're going to be attending coming up. We have Brighton SEO in San Diego, and then we have Ahrefs Evolve shortly after. I think they're like a month apart, and they're both in San Diego. So the DWS team, a couple folks will be coming over from India, and I'll be excited to go to that. I was wondering if you'll be there. I'll be happy to see you. We're thinking even about arranging a dinner, and I know that in our circles, you and I have been in conversations where people were saying that dinners or like kind of networking events or hosted events around conferences have been really great for building relationships. They don't always result in a client right away, but it's definitely a good step forward. And I really like the concept of, starting a conversation online, building a relationship online, and then saying, hey, it would be really cool to meet you in person and see how tall you are, because I always see you sitting down, right?
So I absolutely agree with that. And I think when people are looking at making those connections online, one, I don't know if I want to call it a mistake, but one thing that I notice a lot of people are doing on LinkedIn is they're hitting people up and they're going for the sale.
Mm-hmm.
If you actually think of, I love building relationships with referral partners, because to me, it's the gift that keeps on giving. And
Mm-hmm.
once you have that relationship and you know that, there's someone that they will trust you to give you their referrals, then you might get 10, 20 clients out of that
Yeah.
one partner, rather than having to go, one-on-one directly. So that's where I think it gets a lot more strategic. And that's where I think, the dinners and the coffees and, asking about their business and who can I refer to you, and actually then doing it. I mean, going into these conversations with zero expectations of a sale or getting something out of it. That, if we're sitting down and we're having a coffee and I'm asking you, all about your business and who can I refer to you, and you tell me, and then I follow up like that day or the next day and I make that introduction. Well, now what's your impression, and what do you think of me the next time there's an opportunity that might be good for me? Are you going to refer? Probably a better chance than if I
Yeah.
hadn't done that.
Yeah. Hopefully, right? Deanne, I know you're popular on LinkedIn. Actually, one of the posts that I had commented on and that I find a lot of joy in are your marketing fails. I know you do those like as often as you can. Yeah, I always interact with those. And actually, one of them had quite a bit of traction and actually some discourse in the comments. Yeah, I thought it was pretty funny. But is LinkedIn the best way to reach you if our listeners want to reach out to you, learn more about ZenChange and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. You can either go to our website, which is zenchange.com, or you can hit me up on LinkedIn. It's just Diane Moura, DIANE MOURA. I'd be happy to have a chat and just learn a little bit more about your business and see if there's ways that we can collaborate. I don't go in with the hard sell. I like to just go in and have conversations with people. And if we're fit, we can help. Great. If not, then hopefully I can leave you with a little bit of value.
Yeah. And I know from personal experience, Deanne is very generous with what she's able to share from the social media marketing conference in a community that we were in the past. I remember you sharing your screen and walking us through what was really valuable for you and your team at a conference like that. So thank you from me personally for being that open and willing to help other people succeed. And also thank you for jumping on with eCoffee with Experts. This has been a great conversation.
It's been a pleasure. A lot of fun, Austin. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. We'll see you next time.